Happy Hump Day. I am Donna with Aging Advantage, and we are here today again with another educational talk, the ARPA talk that we come and do every once in a while or a couple times a week. We are here again. We have a different person. And as you know, through the local grants and donation, this is how we offer the programs to help with effects of COVID and other post-pandemic situations like the housing and food insecurity or isolation. So through this partnership, we provide educational topics that can help promote self-care and resilience. And today's speaker is Dan Flynn, and he is going to be talking with you. I'm not going to spill it. I'm going to let Dan tell us. And once Dan is completed, then we'll come back. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, then we can go ahead and address it at that time. All righty, Dan, here you go. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Donna. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Flynn, and I am the managing funeral director with the Neptune Society office in St. Louis. The Neptune Society is the oldest and largest cremation service in North America. We've been around about 50 years, 55, I guess now. We have 112 locations across the country, and that's the last you're going to hear me say about the company, because this is not a sales pitch by any means. What I'm here to talk about today are the pitfalls that people have trouble with when dealing with funeral homes. It's obviously a subject we don't like to talk about. Either we don't want to talk to our kids about our own death, or our kids don't want to talk to us about our death. But even those of us who have sought legal attention tend to just take it right to the goal line, and then they stop. They get their healthcare power of attorney, they get their will, their trust, their DNR, they get all that taken care of, and then that's where they stop. Well, let me tell you, when you pass, your family still has a long journey ahead of them, and there can be a lot of legal pitfalls in that. So here's what I'd like to start off with today. Many of you might be familiar with a TED Talk, and I was privileged to give a TED Talk last year. And rather than me go into all of this, I thought I would just play my TED Talk for you, and then we'll come back from that, and we'll look at some more information, and then we'll take some questions. So if I may, I need to find my TED Talk. So all right. Bear with me just a minute, folks, as I bring my TED Talk up. It's going to make me go through every one of the screens to the last possible screen, of course. There we go. I'm sorry, technical difficulty. The little screen share thing keeps blocking. There we go. All right.
Dan, we can't hear it.
You can't hear it.
Nope, I don't hear it. No sound. I don't have any sound.
Lee, can you hear it?
No, she can't either. She was the one who let me know that she couldn't hear it first.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm thinking when you go to share,
Uh,
I think it has it's like a couple different boxes on that screen. I can't see it though, but when you go to share, I'm just from the past. Make sure that you're also checking the box that says I think something about optimizing sound or something to that effect.
um, share sound,
Yeah, in that box. So when you go to
optimize
share,
for video sharing. Okay. Um, let's try that again, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies. Um,
Homicide scenes to mass fatality events.
good, we
I'm a
got
licensed
it.
funeral director.
can you hear that now?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been around a lot of death, from homicide scenes to mass fatality events. I'm a licensed funeral director in 3 states. I'm a trained death investigator. I'm a member of the federal government's mass fatality response team, and I'm a responder and instructor for the leading international mass fatality team. I was sent to New York at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and then to Los Angeles when it hit there a year later. I've also traveled to India to study their funeral practices. But of all that, I will always remember standing at the bedside of a man in a hospice facility as he peacefully slipped away, surrounded by family, and with his 5-year-old granddaughter lying in his arms. Unlike many funeral directors, I wasn't raised in the business. I'm not a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th generation funeral director. Maybe that's why I'm here, because I'm looking at things with new eyes. Few would argue that almost every aspect of our society has changed dramatically in just the last 30 years. The internet, DNA mapping, social media. But the one thing that has hardly changed in the last 100 years is the way we handle the death of a loved one. They say that funerals are for the living. So why are we doing it so poorly? Well, there's a reason, and it's not our fault. Prior to 1918, with life expectancy 20 years shorter than it is today, you probably only lived long enough to experience the death of your parents, and families took care of their own.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
The family prepared the body. The community came into the home for the services and the visitation, and then the simple coffin was put on the back of a wagon, and everyone followed it to the cemetery. It was an all-day affair, and the entire family was involved, including the children. What changed? The Spanish flu. In 1918, an estimated 850,000 people died in the U.S. from the Spanish influenza epidemic. Families on their own could no longer bear the burden of what seemed like every other member of their family dying in such a short span of time. Here we see the birth of the modern funeral industry, and that's when the problem started, because death became a for-profit business. Now, let me let you in on a little secret. The traditional funeral home is not in the business of caring for your loved one. They are in the business of selling you stuff. Embalming, caskets, chapel rental, prayer cards, limousines, vaults, headstones. By the way, about $15,000 just came out of my mouth in that last sentence. It got so bad that in 1984, the federal government had to step in. The Federal Trade Commission had to create a regulation saying that it was against federal law to tell families that embalming was required by law, or that mom's casket was more expensive because the rubber seal would keep her dry for all eternity, among other shady sales tactics that were used at the time. Let's look at embalming. Embalming was invented by an army surgeon during the American Civil War as a way of preserving soldiers' bodies for the journey home, which might take days, if not weeks, on the back of a wagon. If you're not familiar with it, embalming is the process of draining all the blood from the body and replacing it with a highly carcinogenic chemical. Embalming would have ended with the Civil War had it not been for one fateful event, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. When Lincoln was killed, his body was embalmed, he was placed in an open coffin, and displayed to the public at every whistle stop on a train from Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Illinois. People were so impressed that the new process was an overnight success, spawning a new industry. Now, you should know some facts. Contrary to what we've been told for years, embalming is not required by law, not for burial, and not for viewing. Caskets aren't even required for burial. Vaults are only required by cemeteries as a way to keep the ground level so it's easier for them to cut the grass. For years, the funeral industry has tried to convince the public that these things are required by law, and it's just not true. They've even gone so far as to try and convince us that there's something dangerous about our loved one's body, and it should only be touched by a professional. There's nothing dangerous about a dead body. Remember, we handled our own dead for thousands of years before they came along. At the beginning of this talk, I mentioned the man who passed in the hospice facility with his 5-year-old granddaughter lying in his arms. The little girl's name was Cindy, and I think we can all relate to her. How wonderful would it be to be held in the arms of a loved one as they passed away? How wonderful would it be to pass away with a loved one in your arms? When the man passed, the medical staff came into the room and immediately started to glove up. The little girl was whisked off the bed by her mother as if she had inadvertently gotten too close to a container of hazardous waste. 5 minutes ago, that was a beloved member of the family. Now it's, everybody back, that's a dead body. The room was full of family, and as I usually did, I explained what I was about to do. I'm going to wrap him in this beautiful blue sheet. I'm going to put him on the gurney, and I'm going to take him into my care. With that, little Cindy jumped off her mother's lap and said, "Can I help?" Everybody in the room froze, including the medical staff. Every eye was fixed on me, not knowing how I would respond. Why? Because the very idea of allowing a child to interact with a dead body, even that of a loved one, is repugnant to us. Now, up until recently, options for a loved one's funeral were relatively limited. Social and religious norms meant that cremation was a rarity. But in 1963, the Catholic Church allowed cremation for the first time. That opened the floodgates. Now, it takes a long time to change a social norm, but 54 years later, in 2017, the scales tipped toward cremation as the preferred method of disposition in America. More Americans were getting cremated than buried. Currently, 60% of Americans are cremated, and that number is rapidly rising, especially after COVID. COVID was a major shift in the way we handled a loved one's final transition. We had no choice. In the 2 years of COVID, we came to realize that hundreds of years of social and religious rituals really didn't matter. Home funerals, which is what all funerals used to be, are legal in all 50 states and usually involve the family keeping the body with them anywhere from 2 to 4 days. Now I can hear some of you say, we live in such a zombie society with zombie movies, zombie TV shows, even zombie rom-coms, that we have come to believe that the instant that someone dies, they start to rot away. In reality, under normal conditions, for about the first 5 days, you just look like you're asleep. But home funerals are making a comeback thanks to organizations like the National Home Funeral Alliance, whose mission is to educate individuals, families, and communities about caring for their own dead. Home funerals are really old school in a positive way. There's no legal reason for the body to be rushed out of the home. In the Buddhist tradition, you're not even supposed to move the body for the first 3 days. So in a home funeral setting, the family including the children, come to terms with the loss. Here we see the children writing love notes on grandma's cremation container. They gain some level of closure, and most importantly, they decrease their fear of death by taking part in the bathing and the dressing of the body and staying up with the body until burial, which is the custom in some cultures and religions even to this day. Then, after the viewing and services in the home, the body is taken to the cemetery or crematory. We fear the unknown. Children are afraid of the dark until they learn there's nothing to fear in the dark. We fear death because for years our involvement with it has been taken out of our hands. We don't seem to have a problem with the concept of home births. We're doing it the natural way, the way it's been done for thousands of years. Gather round, children, hold mommy's hand and witness the miracle of birth. But if I were to talk about home funerals, we're doing it the natural way, the way it's been done for thousands of years. Gather round, children, hold grandma's hand and witness the miracle of death. We start to get a little uncomfortable. Green burials, which are burials without embalming fluid, a metal casket, and a vault, are also options in all 50 states, and usually involve the family placing the body in the grave wrapped in a cloth shroud or a simple wooden box. However, it's up to the individual cemetery if they will allow it. Sadly, most don't. They don't make as much money off green burials.
We're here for our convertible.
How about an SUV?
22 states allow flameless cremation or water cremation. It's officially called alkaline hydrolysis, a process by which the body is placed in a stainless steel vessel, which is then filled with a bath of warm water and alkaline. I like to refer to it as your final spa treatment. Water cremation simply accelerates the process of breaking down the tissue and returning the body back to nature. 7 states allow human composting, which, along with green burial, is the ultimate in eco-friendly disposition. The body is placed in a composting vessel, surrounded by wood chips and straw and other organic material, and the process takes about 8 to 12 weeks. Both water cremation and composting simply accelerate the natural process of decomposition. So, between traditional cremation, home funerals, green burials, water cremation, and composting, we can be much better at the way we treat our loved ones, ourselves, and the planet. What do you want? Have you told your loved ones? Have your loved ones told you what they want? It wasn't Grandma's final wish to end up in the back of the closet with the old shoes or in the garage with the paint cans, yet that's where the vast majority of cremated remains end up. In reality, the possibilities are nearly endless. Would you like your ashes turned into a fireworks display? Would you like to be part of a coral reef? Would you like to be spread over the Rockies by airplane? Would you like a full-body burial at sea like in the old pirate movies? It's all perfectly legal. We have rights. We have options considering end-of-life decisions that should be considered a basic civil liberty. I think we should go back to the days when the family had control over a loved one's final arrangements, rather than turning that control over to strangers. So if you were to ask me, is it possible for you to take control of a loved one's final disposition? I'll tell you what I told little Cindy that day in the hospice facility when she asked if she could help take care of her grandpa. Of course you can.
Well, are we back? What? Wait a minute. Sorry. Sorry, folks. Apparently, we're still listening to.
Or you've completed, Dan, or
Yeah, I need to stop sharing. Oh, for out loud.
I think
Um,
on
Sorry,
your.
guys. I got to
It's
figure out how to
okay.
stop sharing.
That's okay. It's go in like below where you hit share, right in that same area. It should say stop sharing,
Wow. There we go.
as if
Sorry about that.
it's
Um,
okay.
um, so I hope you learned some things from that. I hope that was worked for people. Um, Now, what I'd like to do is kind of review some of the pitfalls that people run into in these types of situations. Um, and Can you all now see this? There we go. Um, so, want to play a quick little game? See if you were paying attention during the uh, TED Talk. Let's talk about some of the myths that we've all heard our entire lives, it seems like. So, true or false? Before a cremation, gold and silver teeth can be removed and sold. Well, the answer to that is false. Um, I once had a lady come in and say, I have $16,000 worth of gold in my mouth. And when I die, I want my teeth removed so my family can use that money for my funeral costs. And I said, well, ma'am, you absolutely have the legal right to that gold, but I can't remove it. And by the way, you may have paid the dentist $16,000, but you have about $90 worth of gold in your mouth. The rest of it's a tin alloy, but you absolutely have the legal right to it. However, I'll have to hire a forensic dentist to remove it, and he charges about $3,000 to remove that $90 worth of gold, but you absolutely have the legal right to it. And so she, of course, said, never mind, and kind of turned around and left. True or false? A body must be embalmed and a casket is required in order to be buried. Again, that is false. Don't let a funeral home tell you that embalming is required by law. Now, what they are allowed to do is they're allowed to say, if you want a public viewing in our funeral home, we require embalming. Now, there's absolutely no necessity for embalming. As I said in the talk, for about the first 5 days, you just look like you're asleep. Embalming is just a parlor trick that they use to charge you another $900. And a casket is not required for burial either. You can have the body interred in just a simple sheet. Now, the vault, we talked about the vault. Again, the cemetery might require the vault so that the ground doesn't settle, makes it easier for them to cut the grass. And they can say, well, if you're going to be buried in our cemetery, we require a vault. It's not required by law, but because it's their private property, they can say that they require it. So if you don't want embalming or you don't want a vault, find yourself another funeral home or another cemetery. Cremation is now the majority of all dispositions in the United States as well as in the world. That is true. We're up to about 62% of all Americans are cremated nowadays as opposed to buried. And a lot of that is for one of the things we learned during COVID was we don't have to have all this elaborate ceremony. We can find closure without all of that stuff. And as well as the price difference between cremation and traditional burial. Traditional burial is the prices have just skyrocketed. A family can keep the body in the home for as long as they want. We talked about that in the TED Talk. That is true. People think, oh, the body has to be, refrigerated or embalmed within 24 hours. That's actually only 24 hours after it's in the possession of a licensed funeral home. So, but people who have home funerals, mom can stay right there in her bed. We'll even come and help you with the washing and the bathing of the body. We will bring what we call ice blankets to keep the body cool. You can invite people into the home and have a private service then, and then the body can go to the crematory or cemetery as you so choose. But there's absolutely nothing that says you have to, pay like $1,500 to rent the chapel at the funeral home. For those of you who have been through making someone's final arrangements, that list of all the stuff that they go through to get you to buy, it's like taking out a mortgage. None of that stuff is required. Don't let a funeral home sell you something you don't want. By law, you are allowed to purchase things a la carte. You can say, I want this, but I don't want this. I want these two things, but I don't want these three things. That is completely your right. Let's talk about the legal aspects when we're dealing with making final arrangements. This is an area that a lot of people don't know about because, quite frankly, one would hope this is not something you have to do every day. But I have families come in on a daily basis that tend to be very confused about how the legal aspects of funeral arrangements work. Here in Missouri, this is what I call the line of succession. Who has the right to control the disposition of a loved one's remains? In other words, who has the right to make the funeral arrangements? So number one is yourself. You can do what's called a pre-arrangement, where you prepay for your funeral arrangements while you're still alive. And that does two important things for you. Number one, it locks in today's price. I'm cremating people for $300 because that's the price. That's what it cost when they bought their plan 30 years ago. But more importantly, you get to lay out what you want. Everything from I want to be cremated rather than buried. I want this song to be played. I want my visitation held at my favorite pub. I want my ashes scattered at sea. You get to make those decisions, and nobody can change those. As we like to say, you wouldn't let your kids plan your vacation. Why would you let them plan this? It's your funeral. You plan what you want to have happen. It's completely within your rights to do that. Now, at this point, let's say you've passed. So if you did not make pre-arrangements, the next person that is in charge of things is the power of attorney for healthcare. There's two different types of power of attorney. There's the durable power of attorney, which is for your stuff. And then there's the healthcare power of attorney. And that's the only thing that governs my world. In Missouri, it's very important to know that there has to be expressly written what's called the right of sepulture. And that says my agent, my healthcare agent, has the right to control the disposition of my remains. In some states, it's implied. Well, if you're the healthcare power of attorney, you have the right of sepulture. But in Missouri, it has to be expressly written in your healthcare power of attorney. So if I hear somebody say, well, yeah, I've had my power of attorney, I had that written 20 years ago. Well, this is a recent change to the law, so you might want to revisit it because I bet it doesn't have it in there. Next would be the spouse. People say, why does the power of attorney have more power than the spouse? What if the spouse is in dementia care? That's why. So next is the adult children. And when we say majority, what we mean is if you have 5 kids and you didn't name one of them as your healthcare power of attorney with the right of sepulture, I have to get signatures from 3 of the 5 children. Something that just changed in Missouri last year was minor children now have a voice. It's not just adult children. Now, obviously, we're not going to have a 5-year-old sign a contract, but the guardian for that 5-year-old is considered speaking for that child, and that minor child has just as much right as adult children. The reason for that is we see a lot of where the oldest child is 17. Well, this now allows them to sign the contract for services. If there are no adult children, then we go to parents, then we go to adult siblings, same situation as the children. We have to have a majority of that class of kinship, and it goes all the way down to the public administrator. So if someone dies with no family, the county has a person called the public administrator, and they would sign as the next of kin if there's absolutely no family to be found anywhere. Who's not in the line of succession? A non-spouse. So Missouri is not a common law state. In some states, if you're together long enough, you're considered a common law spouse. Missouri is not like that. Another new change to the law, if my wife and I file for divorce, now the divorce has not been granted yet, we just filed for divorce with the court, and I die, my spouse no longer has the powers of a spouse because she filed for divorce. Again, the divorce doesn't even have to have been, hadn't even gone to court yet, but she filed for divorce. She no longer has the powers of a spouse to take care of my final remains. Stepchildren don't count unless they were legally adopted by the deceased. Somebody who is the executor of the state, or somebody who has the people walk in every day and say, well, I'm my father's executor, or I have his durable power of attorney. That holds no legal bearing in my world, unfortunately. I mentioned earlier why people why cremation is going up so rapidly. Well, funerals now, it is not unusual to hear of a full funeral with a burial going over $20,000 with the casket and the headstone and the vault and the chapel rental and the limousines and the flowers and all that stuff. The national average, now this says national average for funeral with cremation. A lot of people think cremation is the opposite of having funeral services, but you can still have a visitation with the body dressed up and in a casket, and friends and family come and visit and see the person and all of that traditional stuff. And then everybody goes to the church for a funeral service at the church. And then at the end, they just go to the crematory rather than to a cemetery. So you can still have all the traditional bells and whistles that you think of in a funeral, but then you have the cremation done rather than the burial, which saves you the plot, the headstone, the limousine, the hearse, the casket, all of that. So, and then a direct cremation where, which is what most people are going to now. We're seeing that shift to where people are just having the body cremated, and then the family plans its own, what people call a celebration of life or a memorial service. The difference between a funeral service and memorial service is the presence of the actual body. So people are finding out that, hey, we can plan this ourselves. We just want the funeral home to cremate the person, and then we'll plan the party ourselves. So, and I think that's a great shift in what we're seeing, because again, I'm very big on the family or the deceased prior to being deceased should plan all this rather than a funeral home telling you what you're going to do. We talked a little bit about green burials. That is legal in all 50 states. Here in the St. Louis area, there's only, unfortunately, one cemetery that allows green burials, and that's Bell Fountain Cemetery up in North St. Louis. But it's up to the cemetery whether they will allow it or not. Some states have, like California, West Virginia, places like that, actually have cemeteries with where the entire cemetery is for green burials. But it is legal in the state of Missouri. Home funerals, again, I'm a big fan of them because it's more meaningful to the family. The family, let's put it this way, folks, for years, we all grew up in a funeral industry where you're not allowed to see what's going on behind the curtain. You know, what kind of stuff are they doing back there, the embalming and all that kind of stuff. I think it ought to come back to the family, and the family should, do the dressing and the bathing. Back in the old days, the grandma would die, and the women folk would bathe her and dress her and do her makeup and her hair. The men folk would go back into the barn and build her simple wooden coffin, and they would have the services right there in the living room. They would invite family and friends into the home. Again, perfectly legal, always has been. And why do we want to do this? Well, there's emotional benefits to it. We talk about closure, and funeral homes, the way they've gotten to be, quite frankly, is their idea of closure is spending a lot of money. That does not bring you closure. What brings you closure is being part of the process. And also, too, I think we need to train our children and our grandchildren not to be so creeped out by death. And again, we're creeped out by it because it all happens behind the scenes and we're not allowed to be part of it, where the family used to be the entire part of it. The children helped bathe grandma, the children helped dress her and do her hair, and the children sat up with her. In the Irish and the Jewish tradition, for instance, that's still done. And that's how you get closure, by being closely related to the entire process, rather than the way we see now, where grandma dies at home, a couple of guys in black suits show up at 2:00 in the morning, they zip her up in a plastic bag, they whisk her away, and we don't see her again. That's why we don't get closure. Thinking outside the box. There's all kinds of fun stuff that you can do. When I talk about you need to plan your own situation, you can take your cremated remains and I can turn you into shotgun shells and you can go shooting with grandpa one more time. My favorite is the fireworks. Imagine having your ashes mixed with fireworks, professional fireworks, and the family has this celebration of life during dinner, and it gets dark and they go out in the backyard and they watch this beautiful fireworks display, and that's you saying goodbye. I love that kind of stuff. But there are so many different options of what you can do with cremated remains. So explore this stuff. It's your funeral. Plan it like it's your 50th wedding anniversary party. Or your retirement party or a birthday party. That's what a funeral should look like. Nobody has ever said, when I pass away, I want everybody to sit around and grieve and sit in a pew for 4 hours. And, nobody wants that. People want celebrations, though we so rarely see them follow through with it because there was no pre-planning involved. Think of it like a wedding. You can't have all this beautiful stuff happen at a wedding unless it was all pre-planned. It doesn't spontaneously generate. Wave of the future, we talked about water cremation. I get a lot of questions about this. The body is put into a container like this and mixed with a mixture of hot water and alkaline. Those of you might remember grandma talking about washing with lye soap. Lye is an alkaline. If you ever take a bar of lye soap and get it wet and hold it in your hand and just wait for a minute, it'll actually start to burn you. So the body is liquefied, and then that liquid is returned to the water system. And but if a lot of people are like, ooh, we're putting grandma down the drain. Think about when you take a bath. When you take a bath and you're done and you pull the plug, what goes down the drain? Water, soap, and skin cells. This is just water, soap, and skin cells returning to the water system. So it is considered, along with composting, which is not legal in Missouri. Alkaline hydrolysis, water cremation is legal in Missouri. Composting is not yet, but composting and alkaline hydrolysis, a lot of people are now getting more eco-aware and saying, I want the smallest footprint possible when I pass. And so this is a way to do that. Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and open it up for any questions I can answer for people.
Well, first of all, we'd like to say thank you once again, Dan. That was very informative. I would like to say awesome, but at the same time, I don't know how people will take that. I mean, I guess the presentation was, because very informative, and that's what I mean by awesome, because it
Well,
really enlightened me on several different things, and
I lost
I'm
points. I lost points on screen sharing. So
out. Look, let me tell you something. I'm going to totally excuse you for all of that, because I have had such a hard time sometimes with this. Trust me, that's why it took me a minute before I even jumped in, because I'm like, okay, trust me, no pun intended at all. You did well. Because I have some really hard times sometimes. Let me check and see before I start, because I know I have a few different things I would like to ask questions about, and I want to see if we have anything from our audiences as well. Well, I guess I'm gonna start with the alkaline hydrolysis first. Really, that's my third thing, but I'm gonna start there because I can't remember the first time I heard you, whether or not I don't recall hearing that. Is that something new you added? Or that's always been a part of your presentation?
I think it's always been there.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yeah.
I don't know. I just missed it before or something, but it seems like it's the first time I've, be honest with you, half of things you said, I guess because it was just a reiteration, it seems kind of new. But anyway, so that's something that's new just to really understand. So it's kind of like, is it the alkaline or something that breaks down your body or something? It turns into like water. Is that how it works?
Yeah. You're actually when the process is over, you're liquid, and all that's left when we open the machine up, all that's left is the skeleton and any, like if you had a pacemaker, the pacemaker is lying there. Anything inorganic is still there. Now, here's an important little secret I'm going to tell people. When you have grandma cremated and we say, here's grandma's ashes, that's not really grandma's ashes. When you are cremated, even in traditional cremation, all your tissue is burned away. The only thing that's left is the larger bones of the skeleton. And in water cremation, the entire skeleton is still there. Even the smallest bone is still there. They are then processed. The law says nothing can be recognizable as human remains. So it is processed down to a powder, if you will. It looks more like sand on the beach. But to say, oh, here's grandma's ground up skeleton, doesn't roll off the tongue as easily as here's grandma's ashes. So just like we're returning grandma's ashes from traditional cremation, in alkaline hydrolysis, the skeleton is processed down to, and it's bright white after this process. So the remains, you can't call them ashes because there wasn't a fire, but the remains is this bright white powder. Yeah.
Wow.
So
So all your sins are washed away then. I'm just teasing.
There you go. Absolutely.
That's different. So is that something that somebody can still take away and they can have for keeps?
Oh yeah, you still get those returned to you. And if you think about it, for some people, fire is sacred. For some people, water is sacred. For some
Okay.
people, fire is a fear. For some people, water
Mhm.
is a fear.
Mhm.
So now you have that choice. And imagine a crematory where you go in and say, well, turn left for heat cremation and turn right for water cremation, whatever the family
Mhm.
wants, or the deceased uh, asked for. So you
Wow.
now have that choice.
And so, have you seen or known is it becoming popular? Or answer that,
Oh,
how long has it been available here in Missouri?
well, it's been available in Missouri for about 10 years.
Okay.
And the way that this came around was medical schools. Like I've actually operated the machine at UCLA Medical School.
Mm.
Medical schools, zoos, farms have used alkaline hydrolysis for years. Um, uh, and so when you donate your body to a medical school, they
Okay.
use alkaline hydrolysis to dispose of those folks. So it's been around for years. It just wasn't allowed for the public until
Okay.
about 10 years ago. And now I think last count, there's about 24 states that allow it.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
Missouri was one of the first, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. And I think composting is growing rapidly. Right now, composting is in about 7 states.
Hmm.
And you when you get the result, the product from composting, uh, uh, imagine a bag of topsoil,
Oh.
and that was grandma, and now you spread her on the rose garden.
Hmm. Okay. Is it kind of, I know, have you ever heard of, I don't know the process of what they, maybe that's it. Because I know I have a cousin, her mom, she was saying when they pass, they've already, I guess, either bought a tree or they're going to come back as a tree
Oh,
or you plant them or something.
yeah, we actually I offer that as well. It's a specially made urn. It's basically
Okay.
made out of that same cardboard type material as an egg carton,
Okay.
and the ashes are put in there, and then there is a kind of a peat topsoil mixture that goes in there with the ashes, which helps equalize out the pH so it doesn't
Mm.
burn the tree roots. And then you pop a sapling in there and you plant the whole thing like you're planting a regular tree, and the ashes become part of the root system of the tree. So
Wow.
if everybody, if mom's entire life they told her what a peach she was, she could be a peach tree. And
Right. Yeah.
you can
Isn't
pick
that
whatever kind of
something?
tree you want that person to be.
Wow.
And they've now actually adapted it where if you're in a more urban setting, she can be a house plant.
Really?
So she can be any type of house plant.
That is amazing. So, do you find in your line that a lot of people will get away from the traditional, regular burial type funerals and come into more, these other options that they have? Is it kind of difficult to tell? So, usually, would somebody come to you and they want to use your services, do you tell them about all the options that they have, or you kind of just let them go with?
Well, anytime a funeral director, a lot of people don't realize what a funeral director does. And the way I explain it is I'm like a wedding planner. My job is to think of all the details you didn't even know you had to think about, number one. And number two, to help you plan this out to make it yours, to make it special to you. A perfect example is urns. Yeah, my company sells urns. I've got a room that's just a whole display room of urns. But what I
Mm.
encourage people to do is one time I had a family come in and grandma had passed. And as they were sharing memories of grandma and they were talking about grandma, they kept saying that she was always baking cookies.
Mhm.
Her house always smelled like cookies. And I said, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go to grandma's house and I want you to get her favorite cookie jar and let's use that as her urn.
Oh,
I've
that's
used
neat.
grandpa's tackle box. I've used dad's
Okay.
favorite cigar box. I've used mom's favorite bottle of wine. I've used a Harley Davidson gas tank. Um, what
Wow.
is important to you? What makes that yours? What makes you look at that on the mantle and make you think of your loved one? I love it when
Wow.
families do stuff like that.
I know my uncle, and I thought it was so weird when he first said it, but it was during like COVID times. He had taken getting really ill, and he kept on saying like, "Well, if something happens, don't you guys worry, and just put me in a Coke bottle, Pepsi bottle." And I'm just like, "What?" And of course, we thought it was a joke, but he kept saying it, and then his wife said, "He's being for real." He really wants
And
to, be put in a Pepsi bottle because he loved Pepsi. So
yeah,
that's what he wants to be put. I'm like, what, a Pepsi bottle? But now that you're saying what you're saying, it kind of makes sense then, yeah,
yeah.
why not? Just, I mean, if that's what they loved before,
And
it's like a constant reminder of maybe them being right there with you. And
well, and also too, I've had a woman who would a big dog person. She loved her dogs. She had had 6 dogs over her lifetime, had every one of them cremated when they passed. And in her kitchen, she had this great big cookie jar for dog biscuits. So when she passed and was cremated, it was her instructions that we mix her ashes with all the dog's ashes
oh,
and put them
wow.
in that dog biscuit jar as her urn.
Wow. See, people get creative. I wouldn't even thought of half these things. And wow, I guess because I'm so used to the traditional way of doing things. So my cousin was the first one that said something about, coming back as a tree. And then I've been since then hearing just little bits and pieces about different ways. And then when I met you, came to your first presentation, you really enlightened me on different ways and aspects of. I'm like, wow, I just never knew that was available. And we do have one, well, comment now. It was a question, but I'll just read it from one of the a person. They said that you've already answered their question now, but their question was going to be, what about the biodegradable urns or Viking funeral pyres? She was saying that her and her husband has shared interests, or her husband has shared interest in that route, and they have several conversations about it. So now you've
Well,
just,
Missouri, of all the states, a couple of years ago, Missouri tried to make the Viking funeral pyre thing legal. And luckily, the governor vetoed it. But, they're talking about the way you see in the movies where you put grandma on a little raft or in a little boat and you push her out into the middle of the lake and you light it on fire and she, has a Viking funeral.
oh, so
Um,
it'd be like the actual live, I mean, not live, but the actual body, full
yeah,
body.
full body, put
Really?
her on a little rowboat, let's say, and push her out into the middle of the lake, light it on fire, and she gets cremated. The problem
Wow.
with that is that number one, the fire is not hot enough to completely cremate her. And a boat will only burn down to the water line and then the fire goes out. So now you have a little floating raft with grandma not quite cremated all the way, and she's just floating out there in the middle of the lake. So now what do you do?
Right. You got to bring her back and
Yeah,
finish it off.
not every idea is a good idea.
Yeah.
There are, and the other question is biodegradable urns. Absolutely, they are wonderful. When I did this out in California, they actually had urns made out of sea salt. So you would place the ashes in this beautiful vase that was completely made out of sea salt and take it out in the ocean and drop it. The salt dissolves and the ashes disperse in the ocean. You can do the same thing here. The same with burial. It's just an urn that's made out of pressed paper basically,
Mm.
and you can even use a shoebox. Put grandma in her um, shoebox from Prada, and bury her in that, and then of course eventually the cardboard's going to break down. and the ashes return to the soil. The whole idea is that returning back. For the last 100 years, we've gotten in our heads where we don't want people to, they sold caskets that were supposedly air and watertight and put them in a vault that's watertight and so they won't decompose. Well, why are you delaying it? They eventually have to decompose. So more people are now comfortable with that idea of returning to the earth, whereas for the last 100 years, we've been fighting that. We want that body to be completely preserved underground forever. And that was kind of a Victorian era thing. And it's like, why? So.
Goodness. I know when you were talking too about the process of, most people, they're what we've been taught or we thought, we have to hurry up and get somebody buried and have the funeral and things like that. But I think a lot of times too, we've always been like, at least from my understanding, number one, to be like a smell and then their color change. So what about those things if you don't hurry up and do
Well,
something with the body?
there are a whole bunch of factors that go into that. What's the temperature in the room? What is their body composition? How much is fat? How much is not fat? What did they die of? Those sorts of things. But what we do in a home funeral situation, the way that we can help is we go in with what are called ice blankets. And they're just that. They're blankets, but they're made out of that same kind of stuff you put in a cooler with your 6-pack to keep it cold. And we put one under the body, we put one over the body. We, then cover the body with her blanket or quilt or whatever so you can't see them, but it keeps the body cool. There are methods for closing the mouth and eyes, that sort of thing. So again, for like the first week, they just look like they're asleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have many home funerals here in the state of Missouri or the St. Louis area?
No, we are the Midwest. I saw a lot more in California.
I was going to say, yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
of them like in Cali. Yeah, I
Right.
don't.
Yeah, we see more of them in California, but because of the National Home Funeral Alliance, it's the conversation is starting back up again.
Okay. And then one other question too, when you were mentioning the embalming part, you saying it's not um what is it that you have to have a person embalmed, but if you don't have them embalmed, are they doing something else to preserve the body or something, or is it
Yes.
something maybe the funeral home, like they have their own rules, even though it's not like they have to do it, but according to this funeral home, this is what our rules are. We're going to embalm your loved one, or we can't take the body. Is there such a thing like that?
Well, again, they can't say that the law requires embalming because the law does not require embalming. Um, but what they can say is it's our funeral home. And if you're going to have a public viewing in our funeral home, we require embalming.
Yeah, that's what I was
So
figuring. It's probably so.
that they can say, just like a cemetery can say, if you're going to be buried in our cemetery, we require a vault. They just can't tell you that it's required by law. Now,
Gotcha.
to answer your original question, what the law does state is that if a body is not embalmed, it has to be refrigerated. So, when a funeral home takes the body into their possession, the very first thing they should be doing is putting the body in a refrigerator. Now, I have seen funeral homes that intentionally don't have refrigerators so that they can tell you have to embalm because the law says either embalm or refrigerate. Well, they didn't get a refrigerator because it's their intention to charge you for embalming whether you like it or not.
Gotcha.
So, and that's dirty pool to me. But the only other exception to that, if a body is going to be transported across state lines, they have to be embalmed. or
Okay.
international lines. If I'm shipping the body back to Mexico, it has to be embalmed. Now, there is an exception to that rule because in the Jewish and Muslim rules, you cannot embalm. So what do you do in that case? In that standpoint, in that case, there is a special case. It's called a Ziegler case. We see those with like soldiers' bodies coming back from overseas. It's a big metal box, and those are airtight. And so I had a case one time in California where a Muslim gentleman died in Oregon, and they wanted his body brought back for interment in California. So he had to be put in a Ziegler case and flown to California because his religion said he can't be embalmed. But that's the only time that embalming is required, is if you're transporting the body across state lines. And again, there is an exception to that. You can put the body in a Ziegler case. So yeah, there's other than that, there's no instance in which embalming is required. Now, during COVID, where you saw the average funeral home that might see 2 or 3 cases a week is now seeing 10 cases a day. Nobody had that much refrigeration space. So because they couldn't refrigerate the body, they had to embalm. Just that was the law.
Yeah, it was a trying time, wasn't it? It was so, God, yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah, during you might remember during COVID seeing all those bodies in the wooden boxes in New York.
Yeah.
I was one of the people putting bodies in those wooden boxes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I would stand
Wow.
there in an aircraft hangar with 1,000 bodies in body bags that all had to be identified and photographed and cataloged and then put in those wooden boxes.
Wow. Goodness. And I'm making all these faces and things, of course, because I'm not in your line of work, but I guess for you, you're in the line of work and it's probably not as bad for you as I would imagine, but I'll just kind of, whew, goodness. Bless your souls. There are people that work in your industry, most definitely. I'm like, I don't know how you do
Well,
it, but
this is
it's something for everybody.
well, you get a lot of satisfaction in this business because you are helping people at truly the worst hour of their life.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Absolutely. And such a blessing that you are people like yourself are willing to do, and you're enjoying what you're doing, and you're doing it, and you do a good job. So that's awesome, much needed, and it's
Well, thank
helping
you.
to comfort the family. To see that their loved one is being handled with care. That means a lot too. Even though they don't any longer, they're not feeling it, but to us, we feel it. For them, we
Oh,
we think
absolutely.
or something. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions or comments. I don't remember seeing that you put up your information, Dan. So if someone would like to ask you additional questions or even may want to use your
I'm gonna,
services.
I'll put it in the chat, shall I?
Okay.
Would that be the best way to do
Well,
it?
unless you want to share your screen, if you have something that's already and you just share your screen and allow
Yeah,
people to
let me,
see. I was going to say, if not, they can always contact Agent Advantage, and of course, we'll put them, in contact with you as well. That's another
um,
option.
yeah, let me bring this back up.
Okay.
So from the beginning, there you go. Let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen again.
Share. You got your share button, and then the little window that comes up. Make sure you click on those, and it should do it.
Yeah, you'd like to think I'd know how to do these things, wouldn't
It's
you?
all right. That's
Um,
okay.
so
Well, you're
here we
starting.
go.
There it is. Okay.
So yeah, I'm with the Neptune Society office. We're in Creve Coeur, Missouri, right at Olive and 270. So
You have a phone number you'd like to share?
yes, my phone number is 314-266-2898. Again, that's 314-266-2898. And by the way, the reason I don't have it on this screen is because when I do these presentations for organizations like your wonderful organization, it's not about me selling. I'm not trying to sell my services in these presentations.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to
Absolutely.
make sure that people don't get taken advantage of.
Yes.
The funeral industry has had a terrible reputation over the last
Yes.
generation or two, and I'm trying to end that. So this is not me about me selling my services. This is about making sure that consumers know that they have rights
That's it.
in this
Educating.
situation.
That's it. Absolutely. Educating people. And that's awesome because the industry that we mostly deal with are the seniors. And as everybody knows, they are the most vulnerable. So, being able to have someone that they can talk to and reach out to that would seem more trusting, because if they trust us, then they'll trust you. And I think that's a good at least start for a lot of people. I mean, even myself, if I have questions, I know I'm going to come flying to Dan, and just like, Dan, can you help me in some kind of way? If I don't know or confused about something, some doesn't sound right. So
Well,
and that's
I'm glad you brought that up, because I welcome people to call me, and even if they're not using my services, I have people call me and say, "Hey, this other funeral home told me this, that, and the other thing. Is that true?" Or, they've given me two options. What's the difference between the two? I'm more than happy to answer those questions for people, whether they're using my services or not.
that's awesome too. That's good information, and it's good to know as well. That again just shows who you are and what you do, and um, hopefully, then, even though it's not the case or the purpose, but this would allow people to seek after someone like yourself, if in time of need. So again, we appreciate you. We thank you so very much for your time, your patience, and the opportunity to help us to get the word out to those that we serve and educate them on end of life issues. It's
Well,
something that we
and
all have to, some kind of way, here or another, have to experience something. So, again, it's very,
well,
very
and
helpful.
I thank you and your organization. Your organization is wonderful. I love the work that they do.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Well, until next time, if you have any other questions or you want to reach out, again, Dan Flynn. And if you cannot get in contact with him or not sure, you can always contact Agent Advantage. Again, we'll be back today at 2 p.m. with another Opera Talk. So join us again at 2 p.m. today. Thanks again for your time.
Thank
Bye for
you.
now.
Bye-bye.